Hey, it's Dot from dotstrot.com, and it's dinner time in our low-carb Love Shack. And I'm going to be making a rosemary crusted sirloin steak topped with a delicious and lovely avocado butter. All right, I have all my ingredients all on my little counter, and just to let you know, obviously I've mentioned this book before in other videos. The recipe comes from this. I'm making a few little tweaks to it out of necessity because I don't have all the ingredients, but it's The Real Meal Revolution. It's a great book on low carb eating. The cookbook is absolutely wonderful as far as the dishes that they have in there. So I encourage you to check it out if you want to take a look at really delicious cooking, really made simple, and that's what I love about this book. So with that, I'm going to put it down. And what I have here, the first thing we're going to make is going to be the avocado butter. You want the butter to get into the fridge for about 15, 20, 30 minutes before you actually put it on the steak. So what goes into the butter? I'm going to be using chopped up cilantro, and I just grabbed a handful of it and I just coarsely chopped it up. I have one whole avocado, yay! I just absolutely love avocado, and it's adding a really healthy fat. The other fat I'm adding to this butter is cream cheese, full fat, as well as butter. It wouldn't be an avocado butter without butter. I'm also adding lemon juice. Now you can add lemon zest if you like to. I'm just doing the juice tonight. And technically speaking with the recipe, you're supposed to add one whole red hot chili pepper. I don't have a chili pepper simply because the grocery stores didn't have them. They weren't in stock. They're not in season in this area this time of the year. So instead what I'm using, I found it's a Korean style red pepper. And I thought, oh, that might be interesting. Let's go ahead and give that a shot. So it smells absolutely lovely and it has a nice kick to it. So I'm going to use that. And I'm also adding, this is completely not on recipe, but I'm adding, if you can see this, it looks grayish black, and that's a salt. It's a actual smoked sea salt, and that smells absolutely incredible. I'm curious what it's going to do. It'll add a little bit of a smoky flavor, I'm hoping, to this dish. And I haven't used the salt before, so I'm really excited about it. So that's what's going to go into the actual butter. What's going to go onto the steak itself is I've got my trusty olive oil here, which I'm going to spread onto the steak. But what I've got is I've got some rosemary. I'm not using fresh rosemary because you would have to chop up so much of it and just mince it into really fine pieces. So I'm just using dried rosemary leaves. And I'm using that. I'm using whole peppercorns. I'm using red pepper flakes, and then whole coriander seeds I have right here, which look lovely and delicious. So those are going to be chopping up in my mortar, using my mortar and pestle. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to go over and get started on the butter. All right, I've already got my avocado in the food processor. I'm adding the butter, and basically you're just going to add all the ingredients at the same time. Makes it real easy. So there's the cream cheese. Oops. There's the cream cheese. I'm going to go ahead and add in the cilantro, lemon juice, my Korean red pepper, and I'm going to actually add the salt. I have a quarter tablespoon of it right here. I'm going to add a pinch of it, so that would make it, well, half of it, so that would be about 1/8. I don't want to add it all. I'll taste it after I process everything, and then I'll see whether or not I want to add a little bit more salt. What I'm doing is I'm simply just using the pulse on my food processor and mixing it up as I go. I'm going to take the lid off in just a bit. I'm going to do that right now, and see, it's everything's starting to combine. I'm just scraping down the sides. Ooh, it smells really good. And the lemon, what's nice, doesn't overpower it. That's really, really important. Now we're going to go ahead and start working on the crust for the sirloin. And what I've got is my mortar and pestle, but what I wanted to show you actually first was, I forgot to mention this, I'm using salt for the crust as well, but what I'm using is flaked sea salt. And that's what it is. It looks just like, it's rather large crystal flakes. They break apart real easily, so don't worry about it. Some people worry that, oh my God, it's too much salt. We don't use a whole lot of it on there. We're going to be adding a little bit of that into this dish. But first, what I'm going to do before I start adding anything into the mortar and pestle is, if you notice with the rosemary, they're pretty long and they're spiky. what I'm going to do is just here, I'm going to use my fingers and I'm just breaking them apart. That's the first thing you do. You want them into smaller pieces and you just sort of crumble them with your fingers to break them rather than putting them in the mortar and pestle. Okay, if you look at it, I still got a few long ones in here, but most of them I did a pretty good job at keeping them a little bit, getting them small and crunched up. They are going to go in a mortar and pestle. It's just a lot easier when you do that first because they're long and flat. So, because the real things I really want to get are going to be the peppercorns, specifically, and the coriander. So I'm putting both of those in there. The flakes, the salt flakes and the pepper flakes are not going to be in here. So I'm going to mix everything together at the end, but they're just not going into the mortar and pestle. And then all you do is work your pestle around in here and you start crushing everything up. All right, so I've done a pretty good job. The cracked peppers, I really just want cracked. And the coriander, I want to try to grind it as much as possible. If not, the ones I can't quite get, I want them cracked open for flavor, which is what I've got here. So I've got these, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mix everything together. All right, so I have my little bowl here. I have my ingredients for the mortar and pestle in there. I'm going to add my red pepper, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a half a teaspoon of the salt in here, of the flake salt. So I'm going to get that out of the way. I'm just going to use my little scooper and just mix everything together. And how I'm going to get it all to stick to the steak. Now, it's a rub, so a rub can go on dry. But what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to use olive oil because my steak is going to go into a hot pan. And while my pan is going to be greased with ghee, I still want to put a little bit of olive oil on here to make sure that my seasoning sticks to it. And you really don't need that much olive oil. I mean, I sprinkle just a little bit, but it's about a tablespoon. And you want to make sure if you use olive oil, you want to make sure that you use the olive oil that is for basting and sauteing, not the extra virgin olive oil. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, and you want to do both sides, and you want to just start sprinkling on here and rubbing it in. And you want to make sure you get the edges too, not just the sides. And anything that comes off on your cutting board, on your work surface, make sure it goes back onto the steak. No waste. That's really important. So what I'm going to do now is I have some ghee already in my skillet. I'm going to cook it on the skillet. I'm going to heat it up on a high heat. And then after a few minutes, once it's glistening and it's super hot, the steak is going to go on it. It's sizzling, which is what I want. It's on high heat. What you're going to do is you're going to cook it in your frying pan for 5 minutes per side, and that's for a medium rare. Cook it a little bit longer if you'd like, depending on how you like it. But we like our steaks medium rare, so in about 10 minutes, I'm going to pull it off the grill, then I'm going to let it rest for 5. When you pull it off heat, it still is cooking on the inside. So it's going to be about 15 minutes before this puppy's done. All right, the steak is done. It has rested for 5 minutes. There's a little piece right here that is perfect for me. It's about 4 ounces roughly, by my guess, just from my experience and looking at steak. So I'm just going to cut it right off, right here. And it was just hooked up by connective tissue. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and plate it. And so that's my dinner, which is fine. If I wanted a little bit more steak, I could have a little bit more. This is a very lean meat, but the next piece is really important of what I'm going to add to make that even more delicious. Sirloin steak is very lean, so adding this is perfect. Adding this fat makes it awesome and delicious. The steak is still hot, the butter's going to start melting, and it's just going to be yummy. But I'm going to go ahead and take a little bite right now, and I'm going to make sure I've got some butter on that bite right there. It's cooked perfectly. This is awesome. This is so tasty. It has a nice lemon taste to it, but I can really feel that pepper kick in. And it's so creamy because of the butter, the avocado, and the cream cheese on top of it. And it tastes so good. This is really amazing. So this is going to be an awesome dinner tonight. I hope you like this video. If you do, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and definitely give this recipe a try. This dish is just amazing, and I really do encourage you to go ahead and give it a try. And if you don't have a mortar and pestle, just use regular pepper, just use regular ground coriander. You don't have to grind it up, but definitely give this a try. It's so tasty and it's healthy. Bonus.